More legal trouble for the Missouri Duckboat Company in July's deadly sinking. The state's Attorney General, Josh Hawley, filing a lawsuit against the company, alleging the owner and operator ignored weather warnings to avoid giving refunds. The boat sank in a Missouri lake during severe weather, killing 17 passengers. Now, in a statement, the Attorney General added, quote, "My hope is that this lawsuit will ensure that the unsafe duckboats and companies who put profits ahead of safety will not continue to operate." Robert Bianchi is a criminal defense attorney, former head New Jersey County prosecutor, and a trial attorney. So, Bob, lots of questions for you. Let's jump right in. First of all, why did the state's attorney general file the lawsuit, and what route will prosecution take? And if possible, is it possible for prosecutors to ask for too much, in terms of penalty and payout?
Arthel, you got two things going on with a case like this. The first are the civil ramifications and then the criminal law ramifications. So the Attorney General does not have jurisdiction over the criminal law because it's maritime, and the U.S. Attorney's Office is currently investigating the potential criminal violations. So the Attorney General here filed a civil suit under a false or fraudulent and deceptive practices. He made a statement that there have been decades of problems and safety violations with respect to this company, that the owners knew or should have known, that they went out there when winds were reported just a half hour before being in excess of what was allowable, as well as the wake that was 2 feet as opposed to 3 feet, and essentially 35 miles per hour when it was predicted a half hour before it would be 60 miles an hour on that lake. So he's basically saying that they fraudulently misrepresented to people that safety is their #1 priority. They violated that, and he's holding them accountable under the civil law, and I think it's an excellent thing to do, but we need to go a step further with these companies, and there needs to be criminal prosecution.
What's the likelihood of that?
I think it's very likely, given the facts that are known here, that these people went out there with a weather advisory and weather conditions that are past what they're supposed to be doing. The fact that they didn't have proper safety jackets there. The bottom line was, if you are negligent under maritime law, not even reckless, or if you commit an act of misconduct, certainly the captain and the pilot are going to be ultimately responsible for the violations of that. It goes beyond negligence. It's almost intentional, if you ask me. But Arthel, I'd like to go a step further with these companies. These companies' bosses and CEOs and CFOs and COOs who are making a lot of money and are aware of repeated safety violations cannot do a hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil, blame the captain. This needs to go all the way up to the top.
I agree with you, and that was one of the questions I wanted to ask you, because, listen, the owner and operator, Branson Duck Vehicles and Ripley Entertainment, by the way, revenues estimated between 34 and 54 million a year. They've got 225 employees. So, again, the owner and operator, Branson Duck Vehicles and Ripley Entertainment, I want to know what's their legal liability, and can any individuals from that company be held legal, and is it or negligent, if they can face criminal charges and be held for negligent operations. And I want to know, though, do companies like this, Bob, do they have this limited liability in place to where their damages are capped?
Well, no, they don't. I mean, they have insurance policies that are usually typically pretty good so they can pay out. And if not, they can be sued personally. So most of these companies make sure they protect themselves from any kind of lawsuit. So, Arthel, you asked two questions. One, civil. If you run a company, you are responsible for the safety and well-being and making sure the proper protocols, procedures, and policies are followed. And if you don't do that and somebody acts negligently, especially the AG here indicating there have been decades of violations, well, then you're going to be responsible on the civil end of that. On the criminal end of that, and as a prosecutor, I can tell you, when I prosecuted companies, if you had knowledge of the fact that protocols and policies were not being followed routinely, and or if these people say, which happens with many companies, that we're forced to go out under bad conditions because it's about the bottom line, then they can be held criminally responsible.
Oh, okay. And finally, so Bob, that the suit claims the boat's owners and operator, again, Branson Duck Vehicles and Ripley Entertainment, they had, quote, decades of ongoing safety hazards that posed a present and deadly danger to everyone who boarded a duck boat. Now, here's the question, though. Shouldn't they have been required to pass periodical safety tests? And who would have been responsible for conducting those safety tests and enforcing compliance?
You know, Arthel, it's funny you asked that. When I was reading these articles, I was saying the same thing. I mean, what government jurisdiction is there that should be monitoring if there's decades worth of violations? It would suggest that people were aware of this ahead of time. Now, that doesn't necessarily let the owner off the hook, either criminally or civilly or anybody underneath him. But you have to wonder, like, what governmental entity that was aware of this did not cite or sanction or shut them down? And unfortunately, in my experience, Arthel, sorry to say, as a prosecutor for many years running an agency, sometimes people are kind of in bed with one another. They're friends with one another. They contribute to campaigns. There's violations and slaps on the wrist.
Yeah. That's unfortunate. Very unfortunate. Bob Bianchi, thank you very much. And right